Disclaimer: there is a distinct difference between palliative care and euthanasia. Palliative care, otherwise known as end-of-life or hospice care, involves creating the most comfortable situation for a terminally ill patient. Euthanasia brings a definite end to that suffering, rather than working towards creating comfort. Euthanasia is when you make the decision to die. Is the right to die a human right or a luxury? Euthanasia is defined as the act or practice of killing or permitting the death of hopelessly sick or injured individuals, such as a person or domestic animal, in a relatively painless way for the reasons of mercy. While the process to obtain a life-ending prescription differs between states, all require, at the very least, doctor confirmation of a terminally ill disease and a waiting period. Today, barbiturates, such as pentobarbital and secobarbital, are used in the euthanasia process. Commonly used for treating insomnia, these prescriptions work by slowing down brain function and relaxing muscle movement. By taking a fatal dose of the drug, the patient can end their lives in a peaceful and controlled settings. In New Jersey, the cost to successfully obtain an aid-in-dying prescription involved 2 medical examinations, which cost roughly $230 for each, and a psychological examination, which can cost roughly $200. Alongside this, the patient must purchase the prescription, which can range from $3,000 to $5,000. For wealthier patients, these costs are the last drop in their medical expense bucket. But for those with limited financial means, the price of dying can be wholly unaffordable. An inability to afford this process has costs greater than just continued living in pain. Since living is now increasingly expensive, poorer individuals will be exposed to even more poverty. According to Wade Smith of Augusta College, the economic advantages of physician-assisted suicide are the potential to save both resources and time on patients who are terminally ill. Usually, when a patient is terminally ill, the expenses for medical care can rise quickly due to the aggressive treatments, costly medications, and long durations of hospital visits. Not only do the expenses pile up for their patients and the insurance companies, but the expenses can pile up for the patients' families as well. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics states that between 1990 and 2013, the number of people needing hospice care increased from 210,000 to over 1.5 million. According to the CDC, in 2015, there were approximately 1.4 million patients in hospice care. Along with that, Oregon became the first state to legalize euthanasia in 1994, and from there, 8 states have followed. The fact that there are more people than ever in hospice care, along with the growing number of states legalizing euthanasia, serves to say that the number of people who are considered for eligibility to receive euthanasia has grown. As the number of qualified patients increases, the divide between those who can afford euthanasia and those who can't will only become more visible. Another side to that is that since there is an increasing number of people in hospice care, their medical costs will only go up. If euthanasia is an alternative, and the patients desire this outcome, then creating affordability so that everyone has a more equitable opportunities can lend itself to limiting this growing wealth divide. For sick patients who cannot afford the high price of these barbiturates, there are other options, but they are not deemed as the most desirable. Patients can voluntarily stop eating and drinking, which can take up to 10 days for death to occur. This means 10 days of thirst and discomfort, 10 days of prolonged pain, in addition to the pain that they are already suffering. Patients can also stop undergoing treatment. This option could prolong the dying process without improving the quality of life. The discomfort the patient feels will only intensify, since they are not receiving any medication. While options besides euthanasia exist, they are cruel, and the patients who resort to these options are often the very patients who cannot afford to pay the high prices of the euthanasia process. Because of that, should they have to die an even more painful death? Corinne Zimmerman, a terminally ill lung cancer patient, was subject to this very divide. In November of 2016, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and by May of 2018, she was facing death. Living in the District of Columbia, Corinne was able to qualify for the Death with Dignity Act, and thus a fatal prescription of secobarbital costing over $4,000. Being well off, the price was not a concern for her or her family. Surrounded by her loved ones, Corinne ended her life peacefully, in a setting where she could take control. For $4,000, Corinne was able to commandeer her death. For those without $4,000 for a fatal prescription, death is distant. Brian and Patricia Jones were a happily married couple until Patricia became ill and could not afford the hefty medical expenses. The sheriff on the scene said that Brian found himself in such desperate circumstances where he felt murder and suicide were the only option. The couple could not afford to pay the $3,000 to $4,000 out-of-pocket expense for secobarbital to end Patricia's pain. She was left unable to walk, and the couple left several notes citing severe ongoing medical problems Patricia had and expressing concerns that the couple did not have enough resources to pay for medical care. So, Brian felt like shooting his terminally ill wife and himself was the only thing left to do. This video from PBS Talks is about Brittany Maynard and her decision to euthanize herself because she wanted to be in full control of how she died.
Brittany Maynard, a 29-year-old woman suffering from brain cancer who moved here last year to end her own life.
I looked at that video. I studied, especially the last time I saw that video. I don't think I left her eyes.
Maynard lived in California, but relocated to take advantage of Oregon's Death with Dignity law.
Maynard's situation highlights how the idea of wealth can affect the debate on euthanasia. Because of her economic status, she was able to move to a place where euthanasia was legal, and she was able to afford the high price of the medication. Somebody in a lower economic position would not be able to pack up their lives and move, and make the medical condition they desired. Others believe that health insurance companies should not be in charge of covering euthanasia specifically, because the act of euthanasia is the process in which one ends their own life. Health insurance companies are designed to help people pay for medical treatments in order to improve their quality of life, and ending one's life does not improve its quality. In response to that, euthanasia advocates say that because health insurance covers end-of-life care, such as palliative measures, they should also be able to cover euthanasia, because it counts as a form of end-of-life care. When it comes to euthanasia, is the right to die a privilege only open to the wealthy, or a standard commodity amongst all? Being able to choose to die peacefully, on your own time, is a reasonable and dignified medical decision that should be an option to all people facing death in the United States, not just those with money.